Let me start with something uncomfortable. Most men today are soft. Not weak in body, weak in discipline. You wake up tired. You scroll before you think. You chase comfort instead of control. And then you wonder why life feels like it's slipping through your fingers. Here's the controversial truth. Nobody is coming to save you. Not society. Not motivation. Not luck. If you don't build yourself, you will be quietly replaced by men who did. And this isn't new wisdom. Over 500 years ago, Niccolò Machiavelli understood something most modern men refuse to accept. Power, success, and respect don't come from good intentions. They come from discipline, strategy, and self-control. Machiavelli wasn't teaching cruelty. He was teaching reality. He believed that the world doesn't reward the nicest man in the room. It rewards the man who understands human nature and masters himself. And that's what this video is about. Not becoming heartless. Not becoming arrogant. Becoming dangerously disciplined. Because when a man becomes disciplined, something strange happens. He stops explaining himself. He stops chasing approval. He stops reacting emotionally. He moves with purpose. And that scares people. Why? Because most people are controlled by impulses. You become controlled by intention. Most men live in cycles, motivation, burnout, repeat. You live by systems. Most men talk about goals. You execute quietly. That contrast is terrifying. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince that it is better to be respected than merely liked, because respect comes from strength, consistency, and reliability. And discipline is the foundation of all three. Let me be direct with you. If you're a man watching this, your life right now is a reflection of your habits. Your body reflects your discipline. Your finances reflect your discipline. Your confidence reflects your discipline. Your relationships reflect your discipline, not your dreams, your daily actions. And here's where it gets controversial. Modern culture teaches men to express everything, their fears, their doubts, their confusion, but almost never teaches men to master themselves. You're encouraged to feel, rarely encouraged to build. You're told to be yourself, even when yourself is undisciplined, distracted, and inconsistent. Machiavelli would laugh at that advice. He understood that becoming powerful requires transformation. You don't stay the same and rise. You shed parts of yourself. Weak habits, comfort addictions, lazy routines, emotional impulsiveness. Discipline is not punishment. It's self-respect in action. When you wake up early even when you don't feel like it, that's discipline. When you train your body while others make excuses, that's discipline. When you work in silence while others seek validation, that's discipline. And slowly your environment starts to change. People notice your consistency. Your presence feels heavier. Your words carry weight. Not because you're loud, because you're controlled. Here's something most men don't realize. Discipline creates mystery. A man who doesn't overshare. A man who doesn't chase attention. A man who doesn't react emotionally. That man becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability commands respect. You don't need to announce your grind. You don't need to prove your struggle. You don't need to post every step. Machiavelli believed that power is quiet, and disciplined men are quiet. They don't argue much. They don't complain much. They don't explain much. They just move. Let me say this clearly. If your life feels chaotic, it's because your habits are chaotic. If your confidence feels fragile, it's because your discipline is fragile. Motivation fades. Discipline stays. And once you build it, people around you start to feel uncomfortable. Friends will call you too serious. Some will say you've changed. Others will feel judged by your consistency. That's normal. Your growth exposes their stagnation. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming dangerous with control. A disciplined man doesn't need to dominate others. He dominates himself. And that's rare. So as we go through this video, understand this. This is not entertainment. This is instruction. You are not here to feel inspired. You are here to become structured, focused, and unstoppable. Because the world doesn't fear loud men. It fears disciplined ones. 1. Master yourself before you try to master life. Listen carefully. Most men are trying to control their circumstances before they've learned to control themselves. They want better money, They want more respect. They want confidence. They want influence. But they can't even control when they wake up. Machiavelli understood something brutal but true. The man who cannot govern himself will always be governed by others, by society, by emotions, by temptation, by comfort. That's why discipline comes first. Not ambition. Not motivation. Discipline. Discipline is doing what needs to be done even when your mind is begging for comfort. And here's where many men fail. They wait until they feel ready. They wait for motivation. They wait for inspiration. They wait for the right time. Machiavelli would call that weakness. He believed strength comes from action, not emotion. You move first. Your feelings catch up later. Let me be blunt with you. If you only act when you feel good, you will live a very small life. Because growth feels uncomfortable. Progress feels boring. Consistency feels lonely. A disciplined man doesn't negotiate with his moods. He decides. He decides when to wake up. He decides when to train. He decides when to work. He decides when to rest. He doesn't ask his emotions for permission. Most men today are ruled by impulses. They eat when bored. They scroll when stressed. They sleep late because it feels nice. They avoid hard conversations. They postpone difficult tasks. That's not freedom. That's slavery to comfort. Machiavelli taught that power begins internally. Before you gain influence over the world, you must gain authority over yourself. That means building rules for your own life, not vague goals. Rules. Rules like, I wake up at the same time every day. I train my body even when I don't feel like it. I work on my future before I entertain myself. I don't waste hours on meaningless distractions. I finish what I start. These rules become your backbone. Without structure, a man drifts. With structure, a man sharpens. Here's something most men don't realize. Your environment is not your biggest enemy. Your lack of discipline is. You can blame society. You can blame your past. You can blame your circumstances. But at the end of the day, your daily habits are deciding your future. Machiavelli believed that fortune favors a prepared man, not the hopeful one. Prepared means disciplined. And discipline is built in small moments no one applauds. It's built when you get out of bed instead of hitting snooze. It's built when you choose water over soda. It's built when you read instead of scroll. It's built when you do the boring work while others chase dopamine. Let me paint a simple picture. Imagine two men. One wakes up whenever he feels like it. He checks his phone first thing. He skips workouts when tired. He talks about goals but rarely acts. He waits for motivation. The other wakes up early, even when exhausted. He trains 3 times a week, no matter what. He works on his skills daily. He limits distractions. He doesn't announce his progress. 6 months later, their lives look completely different. Not because one is smarter, because one is disciplined. That's it. Discipline compounds. And here's the part nobody tells you. Once you become consistent, people around you start to change. Some will respect you quietly. Some will feel insecure. Some will distance themselves. Why? Because your discipline exposes their excuses. This is why disciplined men often walk alone for a while. Growth is isolating. Machiavelli understood this too. Leaders don't blend in. They separate themselves through behavior. You don't need to brag about discipline. You show it through your actions. You don't need to dominate conversations. Your presence does that. You don't need to seek validation. Your consistency becomes your reputation. Let me give you a hard truth. Nobody cares about your potential. They care about your results. And results come from repetition, not talent, not luck. Repetition. If you want confidence, build discipline. If you want respect, build discipline. If you want control over your life, build discipline. A man who controls himself becomes rare. A rare man becomes powerful. Not loud power. Quiet power. The kind that doesn't beg for attention. The kind that walks into a room and shifts the energy. And it all starts here, with mastering yourself. 2. Why discipline makes people uncomfortable. Let's talk about something nobody warns you about. When you start becoming disciplined, people change. Not loudly. Quietly. They stop inviting you out as much. They joke about how serious you become. They say things like, "Bro, relax," or "Life isn't that deep." And deep down, you feel it. You're no longer moving at the same speed. This is where many men fold. They soften their routines. They skip workouts. They go back to old habits. They shrink themselves just to fit in. That's the trap. Machiavelli understood this part of human nature perfectly. Most people don't hate your success. They hate what your discipline reminds them of. Your consistency highlights their inconsistency. Your structure exposes their chaos. Your silence makes them aware of their noise. So they try to pull you back to familiar ground. Not because they're evil, because comfort loves company. Here's something you can probably relate to. There was a time you wanted more from life. You wanted to improve. You wanted to level up. You wanted to become sharper. But distractions kept showing up. Your phone, your bed, your friends, your cravings, your excuses, and slowly, without realizing it, your ambition got quieter. That happens to most men. Not because they're lazy, because discipline feels lonely. Machiavelli taught that strength often requires separation. When you decide to build yourself, you automatically distance yourself from people who are comfortable staying the same. That's not arrogance. That's growth. Let me tell you something real. There will be days you don't feel powerful. Days you question your progress. Days you feel behind. Days you feel invisible. That's normal. Discipline isn't glamorous. It doesn't come with applause. It doesn't give instant rewards. It doesn't feel exciting most days. It feels repetitive. It feels boring. It feels quiet. But that quiet is building something dangerous. A disciplined man doesn't need validation. He already knows what he's doing. He doesn't need to announce his goals. He already has a plan. He doesn't need to argue. He lets results speak. And that energy makes people uneasy. Because most men live emotionally. They act when they feel motivated. They stop when things get hard. They complain when life pushes back. You stop doing that. You start moving with intention. You start choosing progress over pleasure. You start doing hard things without telling anyone. That shift alone separates you. Machiavelli believed that men lose power when they become predictable in weakness. Scrolling every night. Skipping responsibility. Avoiding discomfort. Chasing quick pleasure. That pattern makes you easy to ignore. But discipline makes you unpredictable. People don't know your next move. They don't know your plans. They don't know how far you're willing to go. And uncertainty creates respect. Here's another truth most men don't hear. Once you become disciplined, you won't feel understood by everyone anymore. Some conversations won't excite you. Some environments will feel draining. Some jokes won't land. You'll start craving silence. Focus. Structure. That's part of becoming sharper. Not colder, sharper. You begin to realize that wasting time feels painful. That empty entertainment feels hollow. That staying up late for nothing feels irresponsible. And slowly, your standards rise. For yourself. For your circle. For your future. Machiavelli taught that power is built through consistency, not charisma. You don't need to be loud. You need to be reliable. You don't need to impress. You need to improve. And here's the uncomfortable part. Some people will misunderstand your discipline. They'll call it obsession. They'll call it ego. They'll say you've changed. Let them. You have changed. You're no longer driven by impulse. You're driven by direction. You're no longer reacting to life. You're shaping it. And that's rare. A disciplined man becomes selective with his time, with his energy, with his words. He stops oversharing. He stops explaining. He starts moving quietly toward his goals. That quiet focus is intimidating. Not because you're aggressive, because you're controlled. Machiavelli believed the most powerful men are not emotional. They are deliberate. And once you learn that, once you stop needing approval, once you start choosing discipline daily, you realize something powerful. You don't need to scare people on purpose. Your consistency will do it for you. 3. Wake up. Nobody respects a man who won't respect himself. Now I'm going to be honest with you. Some of you need to wake up. Not gently. Not comfortably. Aggressively. Because too many men are drifting through life pretending they're finding themselves when they're really just avoiding responsibility. You say you want more, but you sleep late. You waste hours online. You skip hard work. You complain about your situation. Then you expect change. That doesn't make sense. Machiavelli believed that weak men blame circumstances. Strong men take ownership. And right now, ownership is what many men are missing. Let's talk real. You don't lack potential. You lack discipline. You don't lack opportunities. You lack consistency. You don't lack talent. You lack structure. That's the uncomfortable truth. Most men aren't failing because life is unfair. They're failing because they refuse to become uncomfortable long enough to grow. You want confidence, but you avoid challenges. You want respect, but you don't keep promises to yourself. You want success, but you negotiate with laziness. That's not bad luck. That's self-betrayal. Machiavelli taught that a man who cannot command himself will never command his future. Read that again. If you can't control when you wake up, how will you control your destiny? If you can't say no to distractions, how will you say yes to greatness? If you fold under small discomfort, how will you handle real pressure? Here's the hard part. Nobody is impressed by your excuses. Not your friends. Not society. Not life. People respond to results. They respond to consistency. They respond to presence. And presence comes from discipline. Let me criticize you a little, because someone has to. Too many men today want the rewards of discipline without the lifestyle. They want the body without the workouts. They want the money without the grind. They want respect without responsibility. They want confidence without competence. That fantasy is destroying modern masculinity. Machiavelli would call this delusion. He believed power is earned through action, not imagined through desire. You don't become strong by watching motivational videos. You become strong by showing up when it's boring. You don't become sharp by talking about growth. You become sharp by practicing daily. You don't become dangerous by dreaming. You become dangerous by building habits that don't depend on mood. Here's something you probably don't hear enough. Your future self is begging you to get serious. Every wasted morning hurts him. Every lazy decision delays him. Every excuse weakens him. And the scary part? Time doesn't care. Life doesn't pause while you figure things out. Days pass. Years move. And one day you wake up older, still talking about what you could have been. That's the real tragedy. Machiavelli warned against comfort, because comfort creates weak men. Comfort makes you slow. Comfort makes you soft. Comfort makes you predictable. Discipline does the opposite. Discipline hardens your mind. Discipline sharpens your focus. Discipline gives you control. And control is power. Let me say this clearly. Being disciplined doesn't mean becoming emotionless. It means becoming reliable. It means becoming steady. It means becoming a man who shows up even when nobody is watching. That version of you is rare. That version of you is respected. That version of you doesn't beg for attention. He commands it quietly. Some of you are waiting for a big moment to change. There is no big moment. There's only today. There's only the decision you make when your alarm rings. There's only the choice between comfort and progress. There's only whether you train or skip, work or procrastinate, build or distract yourself. That's it. That's the whole game. Machiavelli believed that men rise when they stop blaming and start leading themselves. So here's your wake-up call. Stop romanticizing struggle. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop acting like discipline is optional. Your life is your responsibility. Your habits are your signature. Your consistency is your identity. If you want to become a man who scares people with discipline, it starts with respecting yourself enough to do hard things daily. No applause. No shortcuts. Just action. Because at the end of the day, disciplined men don't talk much about becoming powerful. They simply become it. Let me leave you with something that might upset a lot of people. Here it is. Most men don't fail because life is hard. They fail because they choose comfort over discipline every single day. That's the controversial truth. Not trauma. Not bad luck. Not society. Comfort. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He believed that men rise or fall based on how they respond to pressure. Strong men lean into discomfort. Weak men escape it. And right now, too many men are escaping. Escaping responsibility. Escaping structure. Escaping hard work. Escaping accountability. You scroll instead of building. You complain instead of improving. You dream instead of doing. Then you wonder why nothing changes. Let me be clear with you, because nobody else will say it this directly. If you stay undisciplined, you don't get to complain about your life. You don't get to complain about money if you waste time. You don't get to complain about confidence if you avoid challenge. You don't get to complain about respect if you don't respect yourself. That's not harsh. That's reality. Machiavelli taught that men become powerful when they stop seeing themselves as victims and start seeing themselves as leaders, first of their own minds, then of their lives. Discipline is leadership. Leadership over your body. Leadership over your habits. Leadership over your emotions. And once you build that, everything changes. You stop chasing validation. You stop needing approval. You stop explaining yourself. You move differently. You speak less. You execute more. And here's what really happens when you become disciplined. People start watching, not because you're loud, because you're consistent. They notice your focus. They feel your presence. They sense your control. That's when discipline becomes intimidating, not aggressive intimidation, quiet intimidation, the kind that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself. Let me say something else that might sound extreme. Average lives are built on average habits. And most men are living on autopilot. Wake up tired. Scroll. Work without purpose. Come home drained. Repeat. Years pass. Dreams fade. Potential dies quietly. That is the real danger. Not failure. Comfortable mediocrity. Machiavelli warned against this mindset. He believed that men who avoid struggle slowly lose their edge, and when life finally demands strength, they have none to give. So here's your moment. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now, decide what kind of man you're going to be. The man who keeps negotiating with laziness, or the man who builds discipline even when nobody is watching? The man who talks about growth, or the man who lives it? You don't need to become perfect. You need to become consistent. You don't need to change everything at once. You need to stop betraying yourself daily. Wake up earlier. Move your body. Work on your future. Reduce distractions. Keep promises to yourself. That's it. That's how dangerous men are built. And here's the final controversial statement I promised you. Most men don't need motivation. They need to be honest about how much they're wasting their own lives. If that hits, it's supposed to. Because discipline isn't about becoming better than others. It's about refusing to stay weaker than you're capable of being. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me what part of this hit you the hardest. Tell me where you're struggling with discipline right now. Mornings, focus, consistency, or confidence. I actually read the comments. And when I can, I reach out, not as someone above you, as someone walking the same path of self-mastery. You're not alone in this, but nobody can do it for you. Become so disciplined that your silence becomes loud. Become so consistent that excuses feel uncomfortable. Become so focused that average no longer feels acceptable. Because disciplined men don't wait for life to change. They change first. And then life follows.